My name is Eleanor Marie. I was born in a quiet town on a deceptively quiet autumn morning, crisp with the scent of damp leaves. From that moment on, I learned life is filled with shocking betrayals, unforgettable revenge, and deep regrets. The polished mahogany surface of the lawyer's conference table felt cold beneath my fingertips. Across from me sat my older sister, Vivian. Her smile, usually a bright, effortless thing, was tight around the edges today. To her left sat her husband, Mark, radiating an air of practiced sympathy that didn't quite reach his eyes. To my right was Mr. Abernathy, Mom's longtime attorney, his face a mask of professional neutrality. The air in the room was thick with unspoken grief and something else. A subtle, almost imperceptible tension that had settled between Vivian and me since Mom's passing 2 months prior. Our mother, Eleanor Sr., had been the quiet, artistic anchor of our small family. Dad had died when we were teenagers, leaving her to raise us in our sprawling, slightly too large Victorian house on the outskirts of town. Mom wasn't wealthy by any means, but she was comfortable, living off a modest pension and the dividends from some smart investments Dad had made. She had always emphasized fairness and love between Vivian and me. We were close growing up, sharing secrets and dreams in our shared bedroom, navigating the awkwardness of adolescence together. But as adults, our paths diverged. I pursued a career in teaching, finding joy in the quiet rhythms of the classroom and a modest, stable life. Vivian, 5 years my senior, chased bigger ambitions, marrying into money and living a life of country club lunches and designer clothes. Our bond stretched, but I believed it was still there, anchored by shared history and love for our mother. The reading of the will was expected to be straightforward. Mom had told us years ago that everything would be split equally between us. The house, the investments, her small savings. Fair and simple. That's why the tension felt so foreign, so unsettling. Mr. Abernathy cleared his throat. We are here today to discuss the last will and testament of Eleanor and Davison. He unfolded the document, the rustle of paper unervingly loud. As per your mother's instructions, her assets are to be divided. He paused, adjusting his glasses. To her daughter, Eleanor Marie Davison. He looked at me. She bequeaths all personal belongings, excluding jewelry, which is to be divided equally between both daughters. The sum of $50,000 from her savings account. My breath hitched. $50,000? That wasn't an equal split. That was a fraction of the total estate. I glanced at Vivian. Her tight smile had relaxed, replaced by a look of serene composure. Mark nodded subtly beside her. Mr. Abernathy continued, his voice droning on. To her daughter, Vivian Louise Thompson. He looked at Vivian. She bequeaths the remainder of her estate, including all investment portfolios, bank accounts beyond the initial $50,000, and the primary residence at 42 Oak Avenue. My head spun. The house. The bulk of the investments. That amounted to well over $1 million, maybe closer to $2 million, plus the sentimental value of our childhood home. $50,000 was negligible in comparison. It couldn't be right. Mom would never do this. Mr. Abernathy, I said, my voice trembling slightly. There must be a mistake. Mom always said everything would be split equally. 50-50. He shook his head gently. This is the latest will, signed and dated 6 months ago, witnessed correctly. There's no ambiguity in the language. He slid a copy of the will across the table to me. I scanned it quickly, my eyes blurring. The signature looked like Mom's, but weaker, shakier than usual. 6 months ago, that was when Mom's health had taken a sudden downturn. She'd become forgetful, easily confused, and more reliant on Vivian, who lived closer and took on the bulk of her care. I had visited as often as I could, but my job and distance made it difficult to be there constantly. Mom, she wasn't herself 6 months ago, I stammered. She was declining. She would never have made a will like this. Not intentionally. Vivian leaned forward, her expression shifting to one of gentle concern, the kind she used to soothe a fussy child. Ellie, darling, Mom was lucid. Maybe not every single moment, but she had good days. She knew what she wanted. She talked to me about it. She talked to you? I repeated, suspicion creeping into my voice. About cutting me out? Not cutting you out, Vivian said softly, her eyes wide and innocent. Just making provisions. You have your teaching job, a stable life. Well, Mark's business hasn't been doing as well as we hoped, and the cost of living is astronomical. Mom understood that. She wanted to make sure we were secure. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a mistake, this was calculated. Vivian had manipulated Mom in her final, vulnerable months. The tightness in her smile earlier, Mark's too practiced sympathy, it all clicked into place. "That's not fair, Vivian," I exclaimed, the carefully maintained composure of the meeting shattering. "Mom loved us equally. She wouldn't do this because your finances are struggling. That's ridiculous." "Eleanor," Mr. Abernathy interrupted calmly. "While I understand your distress, the document is legally sound on its face. Unless there is evidence of undue influence or lack of capacity, this is the distribution." Undue influence. Lack of capacity. The legal terms felt like a punch to the gut. I knew Mom hadn't been fully capable, and I knew Vivian had been constantly by her side. Vivian had always been persuasive, manipulative even, getting her way with Dad when he was alive, twisting situations to her advantage. It had always been small things, never anything this significant. "Vivian, how could you?" I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "This is about Mom's legacy, our family home, not just money." "Ellie, don't make this dramatic," Vivian said, her tone hardening slightly. "Mom made her wishes clear. She knew I would take care of the house, maintain it. You're always traveling for those conferences, your apartment is small. It makes sense." "It makes sense for you," I shot back, rising from my chair. "You poisoned her mind against me when she was weak. You took advantage." "That is a serious accusation, Eleanor," Mark interjected, his voice losing its sympathetic edge. "Get out," I said to Vivian, pointing a trembling finger at the door. "Get out, both of you. I can't look at you right now." Vivian stood, her expression now one of feigned hurt mixed with a flicker of triumph I couldn't miss. "Fine, Eleanor. Be this way. But you can't change what's in the will." Mom made her decision. They left, leaving me alone with Mr. Abernathy. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional detachment. "Mr. Abernathy," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "What can I do? I can't let her get away with this. This isn't what Mom wanted." "You can contest the will, Eleanor," he said, pushing the copy of the will closer to me. "But it will be difficult, and potentially expensive. You would need to prove either that your mother lacked the mental capacity to make the will when she signed it, or that Vivian unduly influenced her." The word difficult hung in the air. Proving undue influence meant proving Vivian actively manipulated a vulnerable person. It would be my word against hers, against Mark's, potentially against anyone else she might have involved. But the alternative, letting her take everything, knowing Mom would be heartbroken if she knew, was unthinkable. "I want to contest it," I said, my voice firming with resolve. The shock and grief were now being replaced by a cold, hard anger. Vivian wasn't just trying to steal money. She was trying to erase my place in Mom's life, in our family history. The next few months were a blur of legal consultations, gathering information, and painful conversations, or lack thereof, with Vivian. Mr. Abernathy, while professional, was cautious. He explained the burden of proof was on me. We needed more than just my gut feeling and the unfairness of the will. I started talking to people who had interacted with Mom in her final months. Her neighbors, her friends, the caregivers who came in a few times a week before Vivian took over completely. Mrs. Gable next door mentioned how Vivian seemed to control who visited Mom and for how long, often cutting calls short. She also mentioned Vivian frequently complaining to Mom about her financial woes, always within earshot. One of the former caregivers, a kind woman named Brenda, recalled a specific incident where Vivian got angry with Mom because Mom mentioned leaving things to both girls equally. Brenda said Vivian quickly changed the subject and seemed agitated. She also remembered Mom seeming very tired and confused on the day Vivian said the will was signed, barely able to hold a pen. These were small pieces, circumstantial evidence. We needed more. Then, I remembered Mom kept detailed journals. She'd written in them for years, chronicling her thoughts, feelings, and daily life. If anyone could contradict Vivian's narrative, it would be Mom herself, through her own words. I still had a key to the house. Vivian hadn't changed the locks yet, perhaps out of oversight or confidence. One rainy afternoon, heart pounding with a mix of apprehension and determination, I drove to the old house. The for sale sign on the front lawn was a fresh stab of pain. Vivian was already preparing to sell it. I let myself in. The air inside smelled stale, like dust and fading memories. Boxes were stacked in the living room, packing tape holding together remnants of a life being dismantled. I went straight to Mom's bedroom. Her desk was still there, her chair pushed neatly underneath. I found the journals in a locked drawer, a place only Mom and I knew about, a secret passage in the wood paneling. There were years of entries, a lifetime of thoughts. I took them, knowing I was probably crossing a line, but desperate for answers. Back at my apartment, I spent days poring over the journals. Reading Mom's familiar handwriting was both comforting and heartbreaking. The entries from 6 months ago confirmed my fears. Mom wrote about feeling fuzzy, tired, and not quite myself. She mentioned Vivian constantly talking about money problems and suggesting ways Mom could help. There were entries expressing guilt about being a burden, and a desire to make things easier for Vivian and Mark. But the most crucial entry was dated 2 days after the date on the will. Mom wrote, "Vivian brought some papers for me to sign today. Something about organizing things." I felt so confused, my head ached. I just signed where she told me to. I hope it was okay. I told her again, everything for the girls must be equal. That is the only fair way. This was it. Proof from Mom herself that she was confused, influenced, and believed she was signing something administrative, not a new will, and that her true intention was still equal distribution. I took the journals to Mr. Abernathy. His usual cautious demeanor shifted as he read the relevant passages. "Eleanor, this changes things significantly," he said, his voice filled with new energy. "This directly contradicts the idea that she was lucid and understood she was changing her will. This is strong evidence of lack of capacity and potential undue influence." Armed with the journals, the caregiver's testimony, the neighbor's observations, and Mr. Abernathy's legal expertise, we filed the official challenge to the will. The dramatic fallout began almost immediately. When Vivian received the legal notice, she called me, not with an olive branch, but with fire in her voice. "You little snake!" she shrieked into the phone. "Contesting the will? After everything I did for Mom. Everything you did to manipulate her when she was sick," I countered, my own voice surprisingly steady. "I know what you did, Vivian. I have Mom's journals." A stunned silence met my words. Then, her voice dropped, laced with venom. "You stole from her house? You always were a jealous brat, Eleanor. You can't stand that Mom finally recognized who deserved what." "Who deserved what?" I repeated incredulously. "You think you deserve everything just because you spent more time with her? Time you used to fill her head with lies about me and worries about your own finances? Mom deserved peace, not manipulation." "This means war, Eleanor," she snarled. "You won't get a dime. I'll make sure of it." "You already tried to take everything," I said, my voice cold. "This is about honoring Mom's true wishes. And exposing you." She hung up. That was the last time we spoke directly for a very long time. The legal battle was brutal. It dragged on for over a year, consuming my savings and emotional energy. Vivian and Mark hired expensive lawyers who were aggressive and ruthless. They tried to paint me as estranged from Mom, uninterested in her care, only showing up for the inheritance. They attacked Mom's journal entries, claiming they were the ramblings of a confused old woman or even fabricated by me. They twisted facts, painted Vivian as the devoted daughter, sacrificing everything for Mom. Family members were forced to choose sides or tried to stay neutral, awkwardly avoiding both of us at holidays and gatherings. Some cousins, influenced by Vivian's narrative or unwilling to get involved, stopped talking to me. Others, who had seen Vivian's controlling behavior firsthand, quietly offered their support and even provided sworn statements. Brenda, the caregiver, bravely testified about Vivian's behavior and Mom's confusion. Mrs. Gable, the neighbor, recounted the controlled visits and overheard conversations. Mr. Abernathy presented the journals, highlighting the entry written after the will signing. We brought in a geriatric psychiatrist who testified about Mom's cognitive decline during that period, supporting the claim of lack of capacity and increased susceptibility to influence. Vivian testified, maintaining her facade of the loving, wronged sister. She cried on the stand, talking about the sacrifices she made. Mark corroborated her story. Their lawyers were skilled at creating doubt, spinning alternative explanations for every piece of evidence we presented. The stress was immense. I had trouble sleeping, lost weight, and found it hard to concentrate on my job. Doubts gnawed at me. Was I doing the right thing? Was it worth tearing the family apart like this? But then I would think of Mom, her fairness, her love, and the look of cold ambition I had seen in Vivian's eyes that day in the lawyer's office, and my resolve would harden again. This wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about integrity, about defending Mom's memory and her true intentions. The climax of the legal battle came during Vivian's cross-examination. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Evans, systematically dismantled Vivian's testimony. She highlighted inconsistencies in Vivian's accounts of Mom's health. She pressed her on the timing of visits and conversations about the will. "Ms. Thompson," Ms. Evans asked, her voice calm but piercing, "you testified that your mother was fully lucid when she signed the will. Can you explain why?" 2 days later, she wrote in her journal, and I quote, "I felt so confused, my head ached. I just signed where she told me to. I hope it was okay. I told her again, everything for the girls must be equal. That is the only fair way." Vivian's composure finally cracked. Her eyes darted towards her lawyer, then back to Ms. Evans. I don't know why she wrote that," she stammered. "Maybe she forgot what she signed. She was old. Or maybe," Ms. Evans pressed, "she was confused when she signed it, just as she wrote, and you didn't explain to her that she was signing away her elder daughter's inheritance, because you knew she would never agree to that." "Objection!" Vivian's lawyer shouted. "Sustained. Ms. Evans, refrain from speculating." But the damage was done. The image of the devoted daughter crumbled under the weight of Mom's own words from the journal. Ms. Evans continued, using bank records to show Vivian and Mark significant debts at the time the new will was made, suggesting a strong financial motive for the manipulation. She highlighted the rapid listing of the house for sale immediately after Mom's death as further evidence that Vivian viewed the inheritance as a quick financial fix, not a legacy to be cherished. The judge's decision came down 2 weeks later. The court found sufficient evidence of undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity at the time the second will was signed. The will was invalidated. Mom's previous will, which stipulated a 50-50 split of the entire estate between Vivian and me, was reinstated. The dramatic fallout intensified. Vivian was furious. She refused to speak to me, instead sending venomous emails accusing me of destroying her life and Mom's memory. She blamed me for her financial troubles, claiming the legal fees had ruined them. She even spread rumors in our hometown that I had somehow tricked Mom or fabricated the journal entries, though the court's ruling made those claims baseless to anyone who knew the facts. The family split became permanent. My cousins who had sided with Vivian now actively avoided me. Those who supported me became a tighter circle. The inheritance was eventually divided as the original will stipulated. The house was sold, as neither Vivian nor I could bear to keep it given the circumstances, and splitting the value was cleaner legally. The proceeds from the sale and the rest of the estate were divided equally. Financially, it was a significant change for me. The inheritance provided a level of security I hadn't had before, allowing me to pay off my mortgage and set aside a substantial retirement fund. But the cost had been immense. The loss of my sister, the fracturing of my family, the stress and emotional pain of the battle, it left scars. Vivian and Mark eventually moved out of state, unable, I think, to face the judgment and gossip in our hometown. I heard snippets through mutual acquaintances. Their financial situation didn't miraculously improve, and the stress of the lawsuit and its outcome strained their marriage. Karma, perhaps, but a cold comfort. Years have passed since then. I haven't spoken to Vivian. Occasionally, a mutual relative will mention her name, a brief update on her life that feels detached, like hearing about a stranger. The shared history, the childhood memories, the bond of sisterhood, it's all buried under the weight of betrayal and conflict. I visit Mom's grave often. I talk to her, telling her about my life, about the garden I'm growing, about my students. I tell her that I fought for her wishes, for fairness, for the love she intended for both of us. The house is gone, the material inheritance divided, but her true legacy, her values, her kindness, her belief in equality, feels intact because I stood up for it. The dramatic fallout of Vivian's scheme wasn't just the legal battle or the loss of money. It was the irreparable damage to a family, the permanent chasm between two sisters who once shared a bedroom and whispered secrets in the dark. It was a painful lesson in how greed and entitlement can twist a person, corroding not just relationships, but their very soul. I won the legal battle, I secured the inheritance Mom intended, but I lost my sister. And that, more than any amount of money, was the true, devastating cost of her scheme. The scars remain, a permanent reminder of the day the mahogany table felt cold and the sister I thought I knew became a stranger driven by a darkness I never imagined.